Okay, everyone, we're back here at the Navigate Credit Union Broadcast Center with a guest we've had on before. It's always good to have Rhode Island native Spencer Sullivan, the president and founder of Lean Campaign Strategies. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us.
Happy to be on.
Plenty going on inside the Beltway right now, which I'm glad we're able to pick your brain on what's happened this week alone. Let's start off with yesterday's comments made by the president regarding transgendered persons in the military. What's the reaction to that been down there?
Yeah, it's been kind of sweeping in one direction. Obviously, those tweets caught everyone by surprise. I think it even caught Secretary of Defense Mathis by surprise. What you've seen really down here is, more interesting on the Republican side is a lot of these conservative members are kind of speaking out against this. You have members like Joni Ernst, you have members like Orrin Hatch from a very socially conservative state of Utah, who was up for re-election, speaking out against this. And I think what they're seeing here is that, this issue just isn't a winning political issue for the Republicans or for the president to take up on.
So was there just a speculation that this just could be more distraction politics coming from the Trump administration, and especially the president himself, who tweeted this on his own volition?
Yeah, I'm not going to begin to understand where the president came out with this. I think there's a lot of, he's obviously very good at distraction, very good at controlling the media news cycle. And we're watching, my wife and I, the reruns of West Wing, right, on Netflix, doing a little binge watching. And I looked at her last night and I said, if these West Wing episodes were anything like what we're seeing under the current administration, I would think this was fake. I didn't think it was realistic. But unfortunately, it's something it's actually happening.
And so because he made that announcement, moving forward, they clearly were under the Obama administration, obviously allowing transgender persons to serve in the military. I mean, from a technicality standpoint now, can the president just push this through?
No, what we saw today was the Department of Defense sending out some type of email or statement saying that currently there's no modification to the current policy.
Okay.
But what has to happen to have these tweets turn into actual policy is the president needs to send an order to the Secretary of Defense, Mathis, and then at that point, Mathis has to implement or come up with an implementation plan for that order, which hasn't happened yet. So, I mean, as of today, as of yesterday, nothing has changed.
And of course, this week, everything focusing on healthcare. We're here on Thursday. What's the latest down there?
Yeah, so what we see here is a lot of the Senate Republicans coming around what's called a skinny repeal, which is really just a repeal abolishing the individual insurance mandate, abolishing the employer insurance mandate, as well as maybe more than likely the Medicare device tax, right? So they're going to break this big issue of healthcare up, 1/6 of the economy into much smaller bills and try to start that way. So they're going to start from a place where what do we agree on? What, as Republicans or as a bipartisan approach, or simply put, for Senator Mitch McConnell, how can I get 51 votes, right? And they're going to start on the most smaller bills there, separate this healthcare package up into individual bills, and see how that momentum can go forward.
Do you think that is a method for success for the Republicans?
I think we've seen math of failure for the Republicans, right, in the past week or so. So they're going to keep trying to have this part of the conversation, try to have something to go back to the constituents today or tomorrow and the following week at recess, and go back and say, look, we repealed Obamacare and the insurance mandate, and we took care of these job-adverse taxes like the medical device tax, which is actually absolutely does hamper jobs in a lot of these key states. But they've tried everything else. This is just part of the next gig for them to try.
And what are you hearing down there? You've got the inside the Beltway knowledge. Who is really responsible? Who's been sort of cited as sort of the architect of this now approach to do, again, you said the piecemeal process for which they're trying to claim some wins?
Yeah, so what we really have here is, Senator Mitch McConnell, very in the beginning of this healthcare deal, was criticized for doing this behind the doors, was criticized for not taking a informed approach on this with his rank and file, right? And it was released on this rank and file. The rank and file were not super happy with what was in the bill. You had the conservatives unhappy with enough cuts. You had the moderates concerned that there was too many cuts. It wasn't really able to find through several reversions of this bill, wasn't able to find that happy road where to get enough votes just to get just enough conservatives on the bill to say yes, and just enough moderates on the bill to say yes, right? So I think it's still within leadership, but also understanding they've tried a couple different ways. This is kind of the only option left for them.
And so do you think that, maybe the ends justify the means? Obviously, it got off to such an ill-fated start, took up so much oxygen both down inside the Beltway and from the rest of the country. But if they have, in their eyes, the Republican eyes, some level of success with this approach, again, will the ill-conceived start be forgotten?
Yeah, I think we tend to have short-term memory, and I think we tend to forget, the struggles that the House went through to get their House side bill passed, right? And just, in saying that let's say the skinny repeal does get passed, it has to go back to the House, we have to go back to reconciliation, the committee, and actually get this thing to the president's desk. So we're still quite a ways away from getting this actually implemented. I think what's more important for a lot of these senators, a lot of these members of Congress, and we saw what just before it came on the air, Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy sent out an email telling House members to keep their plans flexible, their travel plans flexible. So don't go home right now. If the Senate passes this bill the next day or so, we're going to take a vote on the House side as well. So I think it's extremely important for both members, House and Senate, to go back to their base, to go back to their Republican voters who they've heard for 7 years now that, give me the House, give me the Senate, and by the way, we also have the White House. We're going to repeal and replace Obamacare, but that's yet to be seen.
So given that indication coming from the House and obviously the communication between the chambers, it's clear that do you think they're feeling fairly optimistic?
I don't know if they're feeling optimistic as much as they want to make sure that if this thing does get through tomorrow or the next couple of days, that they will have the members in the House to get there to vote. And again, I think one of the things I mentioned last time was the longer that this bill sits out, not voted on or not able to get passed, the stronger the opposition becomes, right? So at a certain point, it's very crucial, that there's a sweet spot here. You want enough time to debate and inform voters and the senators and House members to what's in the bill, what does the bill consist, and how does the CBO score this bill. But the longer you let that bill sit out there, the longer that opposition groups, PACs, advocacy organizations, constituents can speak out against it. And if it sits out there too long, it tends to go nowhere.
So, talked about the big ticket items this week, the president's comments on transgender persons in the military, where things are at with healthcare. Of course, Russia, and let's not forget the very strained relationship between the president and Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Does he last?
I think he has his days numbered. I think, unfortunately, what you've seen here is a beleaguered AG brought on by the president himself, and you've seen a number of Republican senators come out and speak in support of Jeff Sessions, of Attorney General Sessions, because former colleagues, but also of the job that he's doing. I mean, today he's down in San Salvador, speaking to one of the more effective issues he's worked on, which is against the MS-13. Mm-hmm. And San Salvador really is the epicenter of MS-13. So I think he's out of the country clearly, right? Probably a good week to be out of the country. Focus on your job, and he's going to continue to focus on his job until I think he either realizes that he just can no longer, take what's being dealt his way, or the president's forced to fire him.
Well, we had spoken with Jennifer Lawless down at American University, and of course, she comes from the very democratic perspective, and she said, if I were him, I'd just put my stuff in a box and walk right out. I mean, coming from Jennifer, have we seen such a strange relationship, and especially coming from the fact that Jeff Sessions had been one of the only supporters in the Senate of the president, just fell apart very quickly. Is it really a matter of how much he can take? And as you said, is it just focusing on his job?
I think it's, well, at least with President Trump, you always know where you stand, right? If you're up or down, there's no question of where you stand that day at all. I think, Jeff Sessions is very focused on his job. He's very dedicated to what he does, and he understands, being in D.C. for quite a while now, the difference between bureaucracies and the point of checks and balances, and how, yes, he serves at the president's pleasure, but he also serves for the American people and the Constitution. So I think he's going to continue to do his job as a upstanding attorney general, and then just see where it goes. I mean, I can't speak personally for what mindset the AG is in right now, but if I was him as well, it's tough to say what I would do.
Okay, last maybe rapid-fire question. If you were to give a letter grade so far to Scaramucci, how would you grade him to date?
In terms of his hand gestures and how well he reflects President Trump's hand gestures, I'd say an A+.
Hand gestures get an A+. Performance. Maybe we can contrast Scaramucci with Spicer. What's the takedown there?
He's focused on the leaks, right? I mean, Scaramucci has come down very strongly and is posing himself to be a quite loyalist to President Trump, presenting himself to President Trump as he's the guy who's going to end these leaks. And it's so much on his radar that he almost made a misstep last night with the tweet, and as he deleted the tweet, with Reince and the leaks from his financial disclosure, which actually weren't leaks, they're public records that Politico uncovered, that he's almost making news stories where there's no news stories, right? If he didn't tweet that, if he didn't go on CNN this morning and do all this good stuff, then we would have been talking about something else instead of the power struggle and the dilemma that's within the White House.
But doesn't the president like that? Doesn't he like the distractions? If it's deflecting from him, doesn't that work to his advantage?
Yeah, and clearly, he likes. It's been reported he likes the kind of the chaos of management and having competing factions, and you have the establishment faction from the RNC, Reince Priebus. Then you have kind of that Wall Street, New York tough guy, loyalist in terms of Scaramucci. And it's really, I really do think that Scaramucci is really just empowering the president to continue on some of his ill-advised habits in terms of dealing with a crisis and/or message discipline.
Indeed, and let's see here. We're at the end of July. You've been up in Rhode Island this summer. Are you stuck inside the Beltway, or are you getting back up to the Ocean State?
I'm hoping to come back up soon. Actually, one of my youngest brothers flying up from Florida to Rhode Island this week. I made a promise to drive up. I'm just not sure if I can keep up to that promise.
Okay, last quick rapid question. What's better in the summer, DC or Rhode Island?
Rhode Island and definitely Black Island.
That was a no-brainer. But Spencer Sullivan, I always appreciate getting to chat with you. First came to be able to get you with having worked for Scalise, but being able to pick your brain is such an asset up here. From a Rhode Islander, getting the inside the Beltway take. Spencer, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll talk soon. Okay, Spencer Sullivan with Lean Campaign